Hey everyone, it's Corey with Blue Falcon Board Gaming. For anyone that's new, I am a United States Marine that started the Blue Falcon Board Gaming Group in the Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia tri-state area in hopes of promoting board games as a way for others to improve their mental health, as well as hosting and co-hosting various events in the community to make board games more accessible. I'm excited today. I've got another designer that graciously let me interview them. We got Jason here, and this is exciting for me because this is my first international interview. So, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a game designer, not just of board games, but video games. Grew up in Indiana, so while this is international, my home roots are in the Midwest. But yeah, I went to college at Carnegie Mellon, just about a day's drive east of there in Pittsburgh. And studied architecture and went on to a master's in entertainment technology and graduated and started up a company with a few other grads from Carnegie Mellon. And then we ended up moving the whole company out to Boston. And from there, I moved from the Bay State to the Bay Area, switched coasts and lived in California, bounced around, a few different game studios. And that's where I found the Bay Area board game development scene. And from California, I bounced over to Sweden, and that's where I'm living now.
Very nice. So what got you into playing board games in the first place?
Yeah, I've been playing board games from about as long as I can remember. I think the first board games I was playing were like Game of Life and Trouble and also some probably hard to find games like the Centipede, Zaxxon, and Pac-Man. They were starting to convert video games into board games even back in that was the early 80s, I believe. But the biggest board game that really got its teeth in me was chess. And I played chess competitively for about a decade, like third grade all the way through high school. And while I was at university, I kind of fell out of board games for a bit, and then got brought back into them with a coworker at the first game studio. Bill McFadden introduced us to the classics of Settlers of Catan, Tigris and Euphrates, Acquire, and then I've been head first down into that rabbit hole ever since.
So how did you transfer from game design as, I'm assuming, a full-time career to doing board game design on the side?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the video game development scene is pretty unstable, as you may have heard. And there's a period of time where went through a series of layoffs and was trying to get back into video game development, but I had this extra free time on my hands and I needed to make games. I don't know how to program. I'm more on the design side of things, on the video game end. But you don't need to know how to program to make a board game. So I put all my energy into that and learned a ton from the. I've got a cat entering into the frame here. I learned a ton from a bunch of the brilliant designers in the Bay Area, like Luke Laurie and John Brieger. And a bunch of others. There's Johnny Pack in the Bay Area. Just kind of soaked up all of their wisdom and started prototyping my own game designs and trying all sorts of stuff, shelving a bunch of ideas. And that's I think that was the question, right?
yeah, just kind of how you got into it. So with shelving a bunch of ideas, at what point for either video game design or board game design, or you're like, yes, this is something worth pursuing, or this is something that I need to revisit later?
That is an excellent question. It's a little bit easier to figure out when that point is on video games, I think, is like when you're pitching to a publisher and the publishers and they say no, then okay, let's hope we don't have time to spend on other areas. Oops. Cat. Board games, though, that's a question I struggle with now. I think for myself, if you, after 20 or so play tests, if I find myself that the design is not really congealing, I'm making bigger and bigger changes to the design and not smaller and smaller, and I haven't really found the core loop, then I think that's when I should probably shelve that idea. I remember one game I was working on as a zombie game, and because there aren't enough zombie games out there. Although I was trying to do something that I haven't seen in any zombie games, which is like in the movie tropes, you've got this situation where someone in the group has been bit, but they're still useful. And there's this kind of, I can see like a push your luck mechanic where like, how long do you permit that teammate to continue to be useful before they become very unuseful? And I thought that was an interesting idea. And I started with that, but I threw so much into this game, just got so bloated. And I remember teaching these people how to play the game, and it was like 45 minutes into the rules explanation. I'm tired of hearing myself talk. It's like, okay, it's time to shelve this game. But with Dawn of Ulos, it was very quick that it started coming together. And I mean, the first versions, yeah, there's plenty wrong with it. And yeah, I made some changes and tweaks, and it started getting more on points. And yeah, it was within, I think, 20 play tests that I could see that, okay, yes, this game is going somewhere. And I started seriously focusing on it.
Yeah, so the Dawn of Ulos, it's live on Kickstarter right now. It's until September 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Last time I looked, the original funding goal was $60K, and I looked right before we jumped on here, and it was at like 79, almost $80K.
Nice.
Close to 1,200 backers. So what's it like having, your board game get backed and funded that quickly? Because it just went live
it's
last
just
Tuesday.
Terrible. No. It's awesome. I'm blown away by the support of all the fans, of a lot of the fans that are just coming from Thunderworks, and they have such faith in Thunderworks. It's like, I don't care what it is, just take my money. And like, wow. I think they're in for a treat, but and also people learning about the game and are super excited about it. That feels really nice. But I have to give credit where credit is due, and this game wouldn't be anywhere near where it is today without Thunderworks. They've been great to work with, and have really helped make this game shine. That last little bit of effort into making it a product.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not super familiar with Roleplayer. I haven't played it. I know that's one of the ones that Thunderworks has put out, and then Cartographers as well. This is supposed to be kind of the origins of that world building or that world setting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel really honored that Dawn of Ulos is getting to take that spot in the history of the Roleplayer universe. But yeah, I've played some of the Roleplayer games, not all of them yet. But yeah, Cartographers, I remember actually playtesting that when it was still in prototype form. Like, wow, this is good. And sure enough, yeah, nominated for a Spiel des Jahres award. And yeah, they've got a strong thing going on there. It's I think a really interesting kind of twist that they're doing with not all of their games are set in that universe, but having it kind of play off of the IP, play across all these different games, and even though they're wildly different.
So what would be your elevator pitch for the game? Just to catch somebody's attention, kind of how it plays or anything like that. Simple mechanics behind it, or...
I would say, well, Dawn of Ulos is an investment game at its core. It doesn't feel like an investment game. Like a lot of investment games, I think, have the reputation of being this kind of dry, very kind of cutthroat, all about the money. But in this game, instead of controlling stocks, you're building fantasy factions. Instead of corporate takeovers, you've got epic battles. And instead of playing a stodgy banker, you're playing a god. And like, how could that not suck you in to play in this world? But that's my elevator pitch.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you'd mentioned Acquired earlier, and whenever I interviewed the Honey Buzz designer Paul Solomon last week, he had brought up Dawn of Ulos, and he was like, hey, you need to ask him if he had played Acquired or if that inspired it. He's like, it came out in the late 60s, early 70s, and he's like, whenever I saw it, that's what it reminded me of, was some of the mechanics in it. Yep.
Guilty as charged. That was, I really love that game, but it's so difficult to get it to the table in the current climate of all these other games where you put it out and you've got this gray alphanumeric grid. It doesn't really scream, hey, come play me. It's got a great system at the core of it, And so I took a lot of DNA from Acquired. Definitely strong inspirations there, but that wasn't my only inspiration. We have the faction abilities from Ethnos. I mean, it's not the same abilities, but having abilities in the cards like Ethnos. And the solo mode actually was heavily inspired by the solo mode of Dwellings of Eldervale. And of course, like the whole Dungeons and Dragons IP, which I'm sure as it was inspired Thunderworks' IP, and finding the marriage between where that theme can fit in my prototype, it was a no-brainer. It's like a lot of the stuff didn't even have to change, but my generic fantasy is nowhere near as good as the more developed Thunderworks Roleplayer universe.
So what do you think the biggest unique thing about Dawn of Ulos is? What makes it stand out from, maybe other games that people get to the table pretty regularly?
Yeah, I've like I said before, I've not really played an investment game that feels like this. I think there's going to be some people that play this game and they're not even going to realize it's an investment game. But I think that's great. But another thing that I love that I think sets this apart is like how different the games can unfold, even though it's like the same core rules. But like I've had players after playing through and say, "Oh, the orcs, they're OP. You gotta nerf those orcs." But then no changes to the game, and the next team or next playtesting group comes through and says, "Oh, the Sheki, they're super strong." And then we'll say the same thing about the rat folk. And like my personal favorite, I like the satyrs. It's a little bit trickier to use them, but they can do some really powerful stuff. And the goblins are a great way to generate money. And so it's every game they play a little bit differently. It all depends on how the players choose to what they're choosing to invest in and build up, and it radically changes the kind of the flavor of each game while still being Dawn of Ulos.
So what are the different factions? You mentioned a few there. How many total are available?
The five I mentioned are the starter factions. And then we've got in the advanced factions, some of those have abilities that come into play during conflicts, and that's why they are in the advanced factions. It's a little bit there's enough rules just in learning the base game that I think it would be unnecessarily overwhelming to throw that stuff at them too. But I think once you get through a game, you kind of see how that works, and then you're ready to dive into the advanced factions. But so the advanced factions, there's ogres. That how their ability works is that when you use them in a conflict, or when you use them in a conflict, and they can eat other people's contributed factions to a conflict, or even their own. Then there's the flares. They will mind control other factions to fight for other factions. You could even mind flare a flare to fight against flares as if it was the opposing faction.
There's some deep inception going on there.
Yeah. And the elves are the third combat faction, and they allow you to, instead of during a conflict, there's going to be some amount of cards you have to discard and return to the deck. And for the winning factions, you want to discard as few of those as possible. So you can use an elf to basically grant them immortality, and they will not be returned back to the deck, and you can keep them at their larger value. And then I've got a couple of others, the dwarves, which are mining through different terrain, and they'll just get extra gold for you. And the last one, which one is that? That's the ogres, dwarves. Oh, frogkin! Yes, how can I forget the frogkin? They're unique in that all the other factions have two different terrains that they use to get their strength, and the frogkin get their strength by being next to water. And that can either result in them having some explosive growth as they put a tile down and maybe connecting up to 3 different water sources, which is more than you can get by placing a tile, and more favor or more strength that you can get than by placing a tile normally in the other factions. But other times, if you don't put them in a good spot on the board where there isn't water nearby them, it might take a while for them to build up strength. But and their ability is about having to kind of kidnap other factions, and what that means in terms of the gameplay is you get them for a little bit cheaper.
Mm-hmm. So what's the tile placement look like? Is there any special twist in this one for tile placement, or is it just kind of your standard? You go off of whatever the board shows, or how do you change the terrain with the tiles?
It's pretty straightforward. That you're just matching the colors of the terrain types for your tiles to the terrain types of the board, and that's where you can place it. Some interesting things that happens are like you can start a camp by creating one of the shapes of the off-map camps. That's how they come onto the board. And there are some abilities like the Sheki that lets you change the shape of where you can move terrain around, and you no longer have to obey those restrictions, opening up spots for you to put down a tile that there was only this one spot and you covered it up, so you can use the Sheki ability in the next turn, put that tile down. And but yeah, the tile placement, I think it feels really good. There's plenty of options, so you can usually, depending on the tiles you have, I think you can do what you want. But I think I think a common mistake is that players come in with a strategy and try and bend the tiles to that strategy, when really it should be the other way around. I think people will find it a lot easier to play like, okay, this is the hand of tiles I've been dealt with. Which factions can I make these tiles help? And then plan their strategies that way.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited for it. I backed it, day one. Got the Deluxe Coins. Got to have the nice, hefty, chunky metal. That makes anything better.
I am excited for those coins as well. I saw them just a few days. I think a few days before the campaign, or maybe I saw them in the campaign. I can't remember. No, right before launch, I got access to the campaign a little bit in advance. But yeah, they look good.
Yeah,
and I'm also super excited for this game to launch.
So, have you already got your copy yet, or is it one of those?
No, I have not. I have my cardboard cutout prototypes that I've been playing with the whole time. So yeah, there may be some. In fact, I think it's probably very likely that there's going to be some backers who get the full game before I do. But I have gotten the files to print the 3D models, and I've got a copy of those. Actually, 2 copies. I have a friend at work with a really nice 3D printer that they look gorgeous.
Nice. Yeah, the models look great. They look amazing. That's one of the things that really caught my attention was you got this big god just on the board, and it's just a 3D model, and it's taking up the hex spaces, and I'm like, what is this? It just popped up in my Facebook feed, and I was like, okay, got my attention.
They're pretty cool.
So, outside of Thunderworks, what other publishers or designers, whenever you see them release something or announce something, do you get excited about? Do you have anything from anyone that's like an instant buy for you, or?
Instant buy. Yeah, I've been burned by instant buys before, but Luke Lore, I think, would come pretty close. His games are pretty top notch. I'm closely watching the Andromeda's Edge, which sounds pretty similar to Dwellings of Eldervale, which I've got. I think that's right there in my collection. Actually, an up and coming designer that I think people should keep an eye out is John Velgas. He does not have that many games out there right now, but I feel like party games just naturally stumbles into them. But it cannot be blind luck, because it's with such consistency that he puts together these fantastic little party games. But on the publisher side, Peter Vaughn with Cardboard Alchemy, I'm really impressed with how he's done the marketing for Dwellings of Eldervale and the other campaigns that he'd been a part of. He does really strong campaigns, and of course, I would be thrilled to work with Thunderworks again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those are just to name a few off the top of my head.
So, as of right now, kind of what's the 5 games that get you excited the most? So maybe not necessarily your top 5 of all time, but either you've recently played these and you're really itching to get them back to the table, or you've seen previews of them and you want to get them to the table for the first time.
There's new prototypes that I'm working on. I've been so focused on Dawn of Ulos, finishing that for so long that I've been eager to it's been hard for me to get back into the prototyping new stuff. But of published games, I've been trying to go through as many games in my library as possible this year. And I have not yet gotten to Caylus 1303 and the original. I've had Caylus on my shelf since the middle of the pandemic and haven't gotten a chance to play it. So that's I think coming up to the top of my list. And I've got actually some other Kickstarters that have arrived, and I haven't gotten a chance to get them to the table. Both from designer friends of mine. One is Goetia, the Nine Kings of Solomon, and Backyard Chickens. Completely different ends of the spectrum. And like one's the Backyard Chickens, a more family-friendly deck builder from Don Gilstrap, and Goetia is this interesting worker placement game where you have this grid of tiles. It's a much more in-depth game. I think I'll probably have time to explain here, but those are some games that I'm excited to play. And of the games I've played this year that have made it most to the table is Foundations of Rome, which is beautifully overproduced. I was looking, I was like, wow, does this? I mean, this game doesn't look like it's all that crunchy, but it's so much going into like the art, all the different buildings and the tiles, and why can't smaller games be beautiful? And so I backed it, and sure enough, it's been a hit every time I get it to the table and people asking to play it again. At all player counts, I've enjoyed it, from the solo mode to 5-player. It's been great.
Yeah, I saw that up at CharCon in July. It's a local convention in Charleston, West Virginia. I saw people playing it there, and just the production of it. I'm like, okay, you've got full-on doll houses almost as your game pieces here. Like, man. I got to play Helsinki. It was one of the guys there, he works with Queen, and he had an advanced copy of it, and he was showing it off. So I'm like, can I get any happier? Like, it's 2:00 in the morning at a convention, and here we are playing Helsinki, and in the lobby of the hotel there, just to get an advanced preview of it. So
nice.
So with everything, with my group and everything, we try to promote positive mental health through board gaming. So why do you think people should play games? What's good about board gaming?
Yeah, if you enjoy them, you should play them. Is the easy answer. Or even if you're curious about them, there's so many different types of fun that appeal to different types of people. And even within board games, there's a wide spectrum. Like not every board game is for everybody. But if you're at all curious about this hobby and you haven't gotten into it, just find pretty much anybody in the hobby, and they will happily introduce you to board games and find out which board games are a good fit for you. That's, I think, one of my favorite things about board games and the board game community is it's so inclusive and welcoming. Like no other. Everybody wants to see everyone else succeed. There's no competition between different publishers or different designers. It's like, oh, you had a game out, I'm going to back it. It's just, everybody loves games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been, I've had to take a variety of games too. I've been going to the public libraries here locally, where I'm in that tri-state. There's multiple counties that I've been going to, and it's been, everything from a quick party game to a 3-hour game that I've brought with me just to kind of see. So I tried to teach Australia at one point, just to kind of open to the public one. They enjoyed it, but it was one of those, like, I didn't know that it was going to be this kind of game. I was like, we should probably win a little bit easier. It's not really that complicated, but it's a hefty rules teach. Once you know what's going on with it, it all makes sense. But all of that info up front, it's probably not the best game to introduce at a public open event to the community for trying to get people into play for the first time.
Yeah. A mix feels like the right way to go. Like maybe there's people there that want to play Australia, but yeah, it might be easier to have some of those Settlers of Catan, Ticket to Ride, Carcassonne kind of gateway games.
Yeah, the ones that I had an event yesterday, and we did Luna Capital from DeVere Games, and then Quacks to Quedlinburg, and they both went over really well. But I still had a big span with me. We get a lot of families that come in with kids too, 8 to 12. So I need to start bringing some more of kid games. I've got a 4-year-old, and I'm determined to get her hooked into board gaming, and it's already worked. Because she's got 2 shelves. I had to count my Cadillacs there. She's got 2 shelves. It's completely just her games.
Nice.
So, my first Castle Panic. What else is over there? Yeti and My Spaghetti. There's a couple Haba games. Monza, Animal on Animal. I'm trying to think of the other big ones that she likes. But even playing with her, I'm like, hey, I still get games in. So on my BGG tracker, there's a few logs of Bluey. They had a big Bluey game that came out. So we've got a few of those. I think my most played game this year is Candyland.
Oh.
Yeah. But she asks almost every night, Daddy, can we play a board game? And I'm like, let's go, kid. So
that's beautiful.
I got to get her hooked early. That way I have someone to leave all of my games to. All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to let us know about Dawn of Ulos, or is there any other games that you want to plug or anything else?
Man, Dawn of Ulos, it's live on Kickstarter right now. We've got, I think, 2 weeks left in the campaign. It's a fairly short campaign as far as Kickstarters go, but tell your friends. I don't know, man, have we passed the 80 threshold?
Let's pull up and check, because it was super close.
Let's take a look. Oh, just 300 away. So you could get us there if you're watching this right now. Although I imagine when this is released, we'll probably have definitely cleared 80,000, be well on the way to unlocking the stretch goal of the component
plastic insert.
Plastic insert. Thank you. My words. It's getting kind of late here on Sweden time. But check it out. I think you'll have a blast.
All right, sounds good. Well, Jason, I appreciate the time. I know it's late there for you. You guys are like 6 hours ahead of me, so we'll let you get to bed here. All right, you have a good one.
All right, you too. See ya.